Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith.
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
And we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 111, and this is for August 15th, 2022. This is our reaction show to the Samsung Unpacked, Galaxy Unpacked. I think it's Samsung Galaxy Unpacked August 2022 event. And we're back here for Anything But Idle, and we'll discuss some of the productivity and technology news this week, I'm sure, as well. And to do that, of course, we have brought our Samsung expert. We have brought Art Gelwicks. He's a productivity and collaboration consultant. He's a blogger at Gelwicks Tech, and he's the host of the Being Productive podcast, cross-platform with Augusto Pinaud. And of course, he joins us on Productivity Cast each and every week. Welcome to the show, Art.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm glad you had me out for this.
Good.
My wife went over to South Korea recently, and I asked her to bring me back a hat or something. She didn't, so I'm going to use it as an excuse to buy a new phone. So we'll see how well that works. So
I have to say, I've had a number of people in my life come to me and say, "Hey, this Z Fold 4, will this work for me?" And that's a really big change. I have not heard that from, and these are fairly techie folks, right? So I'm really shocked that there's a number of my techie folks in my life who have come to me about this particular phone. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. Let's kick into it and let's have a discussion about the primary announcements at the Samsung Galaxy Unpacked August 2022 edition.
So we're not starting on the Fold. Okay.
No, actually, and they didn't either, which is interesting.
They didn't either.
No, they started off with the normal quality presentation that you would expect. They had this little bit of a quirky semi-ad at the beginning, but they leaned in right away to the Flip. And the Flip is kind of their surprise star of this foldable space, because a lot of people look at that thing and they're like, oh yeah, it's like it's like a Star Trek communicator. It's an old Razor. It's whatever. But man, that has gotten the interest. People like the thing. They like the design. I have access to one all the time because my daughter has one, and just seeing its functionality. And I think Samsung has recognized this in their sales. They're like, you know what? This is our leader. I mean, the Fold and the other, yeah, they have a lot of power, but this is the one that's kind of clicking in with the whole influencer area and people who are as cognizant of the device itself as they are of what the device does.
You know, when I look at my daughter is 13, and when I look at her and the use on the phone, it is interesting because before she got the phone, obviously the iPad was her device, and she carried the iPad and she used the iPad significantly. Okay, she talked with her friends on FaceTime and all this. When she got the phone, really the iPad went almost to a corner to die, and it is the phone, and it is very interesting to see how different they use that device. And when I look at that device, and I connect that with my daughter, I see how she will enjoy a device like that significantly, where she can do different things with that Fold. So it is different to what I will use the phone, but I can see her really enjoying a device like that.
I got to see, just as an anecdotal piece to this, I got to see the Flip working in its strongest position this past weekend, because I had a family get together and we wanted to take a group picture of everybody with the family. And if you've ever had just your phone in your pocket, that actually can be a bit of a hassle, because you got to figure someplace to set it up, and then you can use the timer and everything like that. My daughter pulled hers out, bent it into the shape of an L, put it on the table. We could see the screen, and she took the picture. It was that simple. And at that point, it reinforced to me the messaging that Samsung was laying out in their presentation. And if you watch their presentation, a lot of it was about, one, how you can use the camera in a different position than you would normally use a cell phone. Think about it this way. When you hold a phone, in landscape mode to take a picture. It's kind of big. It's kind of awkward. Now, if you take it and you turn it 90 degrees in the middle, you can now hold it as if it were, say, an old style camcorder. It's much more comfortable. It's much more intuitive, and it works with the lens on the back. So now all of a sudden, this thing becomes very easy to shoot and generate content. So that's a big thing. The design itself hasn't really changed, actually. It's gotten a little thinner. It's got an aluminum frame. It has the same architecture, the same feel. It's just a refinement. And I think across the board, that was kind of the narrative of all the products released this time, is they are all refinements of the standard that they've created in the previous version. But there were a couple things that I thought were interesting call outs. One refinement that they had on the Flip is they've added more functionality to that little outside screen when it's closed. And again, it's one of those things you can see them stealing from other things, because it very much reminded me of using the smartwatch with that kind of interface. But being able to flip through messages and be able to, which I think is a neat feature, swipe up and pull up your Samsung wallet and choose what you want to pay with, and then be able to do all that without having to open the phone. And what occurred to me about that is that's a twofold win for them. One, it provides targeted functionality to get people to use those things. But second, every time you don't have to open that device, it's less wear and tear on those internals and that internal screen. So that's definitely a plus for them. It has improved its water resistance a bit. It's now IPX8. So don't take it swimming, but it's okay if you do a little spill on it. That's fine. They are pushing heavily the bespoke edition. There's, I think, like 74 different combinations you can put together to make this thing look like however you want it to look. But across the board, I think it's just one of those devices that they recognized, hey, we kind of got this one right, and people are telling us that, and we're sticking with that. So I was very impressed to see that part of it.
Yeah, it comes in at $1,000. It's a refined device. I don't think much changed with the cameras. There's the very, very minor upgrades to the camera, but I think that's probably the same. And you do get the new Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 processor, so it continues to get upgraded in terms of processor. So I think I think it's really interesting to see where this is going to go. Augusto?
I was going to say they are doing Samsung is doing something very, very well with the bespoke, because it's, and we have mentioned this before. Their shows are getting better and better. The products are aiming for that high end. Hey, you don't want to buy an Apple, but you want the same level of Apple. This is our solution. And one of the biggest complaints for Apple people is been, well, you go kind of in the Henry Ford style. You can have your product in any color you want, as far as it's black, and they are offering exactly the answer for that. Okay, we don't want to give you this. We want you to really make this device your own. So they have been envisioning how to make that very easy for them, so people can still get their unique thing. And I think they're playing that game very, very well.
Yeah, they had the go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Art.
I was going to say they had the obligatory BTS appearance to promote the product, so they've got it in the hands of, the K-pop stars and all. But you're right. The bespoke part to me is a very interesting one, because it does tie in ownership very strongly with the device. It's more than just the black slab of glass. I just can't help but wonder if longer term it can become a catch-22, because unless you go to trade in the device, say you wanted to sell a used one, well, if the person buying it doesn't like the bespoke combination that you've chosen, you may be really limiting down your market. And I equate it to when iPhones first started to come out, you could get engraved ones where you could have your name engraved on the back of it. And who would want to buy one that has somebody else's name on it? So, but I do like the concept. I like their integration with it. What was interesting to me, and this is really pointed to you, Ray, they called out the fact that Google Meet is built in from day one. They stressed that out. They highlighted a few times the Google interface, the Google tie-ins, the Google partnership, and positioning Google Meet as their quote FaceTime alternative. I thought that was pretty bold, actually.
Yeah, I think they are toggling an interesting tightrope walk, right? You know, they did actually talk later on in the show about how well Microsoft worked on the Z Fold 4 and so on and so forth. But I think it makes a lot of sense for them to appreciate the importance of the relationship with Wear OS, and you know, Google and Samsung's work on Wear OS, their work on Android together. I mean, even with One UI and them continuing to push it, they have still been pretty tight partners in working together behind the scenes regarding Android 12 and now Android 13, which as of today has been starting to release out to the Pixel line of phones. So I think this is their nod to the fact that they have this business audience that is growing on Android, that is using Google Workspace both on the business, enterprise, and education editions, and they want to make sure that they spread the message that they play nicely with Google in that sense. And I think that's a good political move for them.
Yeah, I think we're going to see quite a bit of success from this phone. It's at a price point and a functionality point that I would have no hesitation recommending somebody take a look at it. If they're looking at something that is not considered a flagship level, I mean, it's got that level of processor and capabilities. It's also got much better battery life than it had, uh, just because of how they rearranged the internals. But it still would not be considered what I would, or would not be what I would consider a productivity flagship. This is more of a life work than a work life kind of device. So
Yeah, and I think that, you know, I probably wouldn't get it at 128 gigabytes if you're going to be doing a lot of, you know, heavy duty, you know, creator work. So I just can't imagine that the base level model would make sense. So I would say that 256 or the 512 gigabytes
yeah,
are
N-
almost a must.
neither of these devices, either the Flip or the Fold, I would recommend at the low end,
Yeah.
just because if you really want to stretch the camera capability in there, you shoot high res, you shoot 4K, you shoot 8K in some cases. If you're doing video work, you do the editing. You want to be able to have the space to be able to flex that, and the cloud doesn't do that for you. You need that space on the device to be able to take advantage of all of that. So.
All right. From there, we move on to which device?
The
Do you want
Galaxy Buds 2
All right.
Pro was next up. I'm just kind of
Okay.
walking through. I'm
Yeah,
going to
let's do
walk
it.
through their presentation to a point because they yanked me around a little bit and I have an issue with them. But Augusto's already heard this part, but you get to hear me rant now too. I had to bring a soapbox into this somehow. But Galaxy Buds 2 Pro, which again is a tough naming thing, it's a mouthful, but they've improved a couple of the things about my favorite set of earbuds because I have the Galaxy Buds too, and I love them and I use them all the time. But they've changed from a 16-bit configuration to a 24-bit configuration for music. Now, not to get too far inside baseball, but Bluetooth only supports 16-bit. So to get that 24-bit capability, Samsung actually wrote their own audio codec to improve the audio quality, which I think is a nice step in the right direction. I mean, if you want to get the maximum out of these things, you need to push beyond the limitations of the infrastructure pieces that connect them to your devices. They have uh, automatic noise canceling, like we're used to now. They have ambient sound awareness, so you can actually hear what's around you when the buds are still plugged in. They have the feature of where if you have active noise cancellation turned on and you start talking, it will actually flip it off during that time period where you're talking and then turn it back on when you're done, which I think is really nice. So it doesn't sound like you're in a tin can. Uh, but they did have a couple of interesting features to it. You can pair these now with Samsung TVs. And they highlighted this aspect. So the demo they had is a guy had a phone on the coffee table and he was watching the TV late at night and he got a call and they automatically switched over and switched back. I think it's nice that they're expanding the connection into the ecosystem. They recognize all the different devices that these need to interface with and play with happily. I don't know that they're necessarily there yet. I'm hoping that the Galaxy Buds 2 Pros work a little bit better. Mine are still a little contrary when it goes from device to device. Sometimes they can disconnect themselves for random reasons, but they look stylish. They look like they have a good fit. They've supposedly redesigned them again. I'm not quite sure why, considering ears haven't changed, but they could conceivably fit a little bit better. But it's, again, it's a refinement, and that's one of the things that I think is nice, is to see this continuous refinement of capabilities.
I'll say
Well,
to anybody who is out there, by the way, is that if you want a set of earbuds to fit, you need to have custom ear molds, created. It's really very little about the device itself, unless they're hard shelled, pieces that go into your ear. Those outer casings, fine. They basically are mostly aerodynamic, and they fit into your your earlobe. But the part that goes into the canal, just resting in, really get custom, injected molds, and those buds will then fit really properly. And you can have them done in non-silicone versions as well, so that if you do have an allergy to silicone or something like that, you can go ahead and deal with that. Augusto?
One of the
okay,
nice things
you
that
may need to be called to put a link on the notes of the show. So
mm,
find me a link so I can put it in the notes of the show, because the only reason I have never bought the Pro is exactly that: is the silicone will kill me. I will need to rip my ears off. But I
yeah.
didn't know about the custom thing.
A couple of the things that I find interesting. One is Samsung has, and they have in this current version, and I'm sure they have it in the new version, they have, as part of the audio app, a testing mode where it will test the audio that it hears in the microphones and does an internal check. I don't know, some kind of sorcery that it does, but it'll tell you when one of them fits it well and one of them doesn't fit well, and have you adjust the earpieces to make them fit better. I actually wound up with two different sized earpieces because apparently one hole's bigger than the other in my head. And that made all the difference. I would not have noticed that otherwise. So seeing that configuration check works out well. What disappoints me is they haven't done yet what I hope they will do at some point, which is go beyond audio. I want to see one of these sets of Pro Buds with a temperature sensor in it. And we'll talk about that later on, but I think that's a perfect place for it. I mean, that's where you take a little kid and you stick that thermometer thing in their ear to get their temperature. If you're going to have that in there, you could do infrared, you could do pulse, that would be a good next step. Now, we may see that in future generations, but right now, not quite there yet.
Oh, may Apple may invent it pretty soon. I don't
Oh,
know.
no, Apple's
Uh,
going to invent ears first. Once they invent ears, then they will invent the thing to go in them. So just to
But
be
I will I
clear.
so
will say I will say that it actually makes a lot of sense. If you are a Samsung Galaxy Watch wearer and you have those buds in, being able to take those two different temperatures and then reconcile them to make
Oh, yeah.
sure that they're correct, that could be a wonderful set of data points and some good statistics that can be run on the
Mhm.
body to make sure that you are actually uh, you know getting good data, which I like. So I like that
Yeah,
concept. Augusto?
absolutely.
so the thing I complain about the fact that my AirPods are all white, okay, the cases, and that I need to get that ugly silicone thing to get different colors, and I have multiple pairs, because I have multiple devices, and Samsung went all white on the outside. Yes, okay, if you open, you can see your color. That was one of the few things out of the old Samsung earbuds that I really liked, and I always look at them and say, I really like the idea that I can buy, white, greens, and know exactly what device it is without anything else. Okay. And I don't understand why they did that. It was fine with the color outside. Why they need now to be all whitey? That's a complaint.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it does kind of fly. It's actually available in three colors. I'm looking at their website right now. It's white, black, and their Bora purple, which they're leaning hard into, is that like almost lavenderish purple. But you're right, it does kind of fly in the face of their other messaging of having this bespoke approach. And then you drill this down to three colors. And one color a lot of people aren't going to go with. So
But
you
the
got white
case
or
on the
black.
outside are all the same. Doesn't matter
Yes.
which color. So if you go and say, okay, I want the purple for whatever reason, you cannot show that. You used to be able to show, I picked the purple.
Oh no,
Now
no,
they're
the
all
cases
white
the
on the
cases color
outside.
no, the cases color match the earbuds. They may have shown it differently, but looking at their site right now, the cases are a color match to the buds
Oh, when
themselves.
they show the case was matched on the inside, but on the
Yeah.
outside they were all white when they did the show.
Yeah, and that's a little confusing. And again, that's again one of those opportunities they have to the case doesn't care what the earbuds are in it. Why can't I get the purple earbuds with the black case? Or, get the white or the black earbuds with the white case and have like little panda bears. I should be able to do that. And that should be an option. Whether we'll have that or not, I don't know. And there would
Yeah.
be a market for little panda bears, just to be clear.
Oh,
So Samsung,
absolutely.
you're
yeah.
missing
Oh,
out. I
yeah.
want props on that. I
Absolutely.
want to cut on that idea. So anyway,
So 229 is the price for USD for the Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro, and they're running 20. It says 20 hours uh full time with it. That's including the charging case. 5 hours with ANC on, 8 hours without active noise cancellation on, and then when you turn off active noise cancellation, then you have 30 hours with the charging case, meaning that you listen for 8, put it back in charge, listen for another 8, put it back on the charge until you get to that 30-hour range. So
and
that's not bad. That's not bad.
no,
Very
it's
good.
not. I mean, if I go all day with mine, yeah, there's a point where you have to take them out and charge them.
Oh yeah.
There is a nice aspect, and a lot of them have this, is the ability to use one at a time. So you run one, when it dies, you pop it out, pop the other one in. So if you're using it for work and not listening to stereo music, that works great.
Yeah, I
And I
recently
haven't
went on.
found them to be uncomfortable, the physical casing, uncomfortable for that long of a period. A lot of times you'll get them and you wear them, and it's just, after a while, you just got to take it out. These, I could leave it in all day and not notice. I've fallen asleep with them in my ears and have not noticed until I wake up in the morning and they're on the nightstand and I don't know how they got there and I get a little nervous. But anyway, so
Oh, I have wake up with mine on my ears. They don't bother me. I can spend the whole day with the things in the ears.
Yeah, I've had many different Bluetooth headsets. Some of them have caused me more or less. I think it's all about the pressure. If they stick out at all from my ears and provide pressure on my ear, since I'm a side sleeper, it will cause me discomfort and I will take them out.
it was one other thing we didn't talk about related to the pros that I think is a good addition. Again, a refinement. The Buds 2, you could use Samsung things to locate them if you misplace the earbuds in the case. This, you can locate just the earbuds. So if you drop an earbud, you can go track it down. That I think is big, because I have worried numerous times. I'll take my earbuds out. It's like, oh, wait, they're not in the case. I can find the case, but they're not in there. So it's, again, a nice refinement to how they're applying this. So
Right. And talking about that, they're IPX7, so for water resistance. So that's you can go out in the rain, work out, you're not going to have any problems, and you can drop them in the toilet, but you probably should take them immediately out and dry. So like that's good. But the case itself is not water resistant.
no, it
So
isn't.
be mindful of the fact that the buds themselves have some protection, but the case does not.
Nice feature for the Buds, or the Buds 2 and the Pros. When you're using it with a Samsung device, and I use Samsung Messenger, and you get a text message, it will read it to you out loud right through the Bud. So it'll stop your music, it'll read you the message, and resume your music. That is wonderful. When you're working on something or doing something that you just don't want to pull your phone out, you can just listen to it. Oh, this is great. And if you've got a smartwatch, you could reply off of the watch. So again, you don't have to go chase your phone down. Nice feature.
Absolutely. Yeah, just having Google Assistant on the Pixel line of phones and having those features is such a benefit. And I think that, Samsung giving that same one to their users tied together
Mhm.
just makes a lot of sense, and
Yes, it
makes
does.
it so much more productive for you to just basically seamlessly transact messages that way. My only gripe is that my car sends and receives the Google messages, but it will not send and receive Google Voice. And so
Oh, okay.
so I get the text messages through Android messages, but not through the Google Voice messages. And so it's just like, it's these little kinds of frustrations where you're driving, it'll read it to you, except 99% of my text messages are coming in another application, and so then you're kind of stuck in this scenario. So that's a message
Makes
to you,
sense.
Google. Figure it out. So,
Oh, wait. Are you saying that Google needs to work out something with their messaging? Wait, this is news, man. This is breaking news. No,
this is
sorry.
ancient news. It is ancient
I was
news.
going to say the
And
sarcasm is
ancient,
running thick.
ancient and ongoing. Ancient and
Oh,
ongoing.
we'll get that back when we get Google Reader back. Anyway.
Hey,
So-
I will sign up to Google Reader in a heartbeat. Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm very happy with Fitly, but I was in love with
I miss it.
Google Reader. So
Peace out, Google Reader. Anyway, so the
right.
next thing that came up was my thing. I was waiting on this anxiously, which was the Galaxy Watch 5. Now I have a 4. I love my 4. I live with my 4 on. Wanted to see where they were going with this, and sure enough, nice looking watch. Clean display, clean interface. It has the virtual touch outer bezel. Just slide your finger around it. The only really substantial changes, though, they've added a sensor they're not doing anything with, but they will be soon. And they don't offer it with a mechanical bezel. So I'll get to the bezel in a minute, but this new sensor is a temperature sensor, kind of like we were talking about for the earbuds. There's now a temperature sensor built into the watch. So at some point, they're going to add that or turn that on in Samsung Health and use that, they're saying, for more accurate readings, literally temperature monitoring, things like that. So it'll be, again, a nice new health data point to include in all the capabilities of it. It looks like the battery life's a bit better. Looks like the display's a little bit tighter. Again, Wear OS 3.0 right now, so it's solid with that capability. So they look like good, solid devices. Would I go from a 4 to a 5? Probably not. 3 to a 5 or something else? Absolutely. Would I hesitate on buying it if I didn't have one? No, not at all. But again, this is kind of that iterative thing. And the reason why I wanted to call it out, I'll talk about when we talk about the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro. But I'm curious, Ray, what did you think? Because I know you're anxiously awaiting the Google combatant in this battle royale.
Yeah, I was looking very, very close at the Galaxy 5, the Galaxy Watch 5, and that I have the Galaxy Watch 4, and literally I'm just counting down the days until Google announces in a couple of months the launch of the Pixel Watch, and I undoubtedly will already have purchased it by then. I'll pre-order as soon as it's available. But I will say that I have enjoyed the Galaxy Watch 4 today far more than I did in prior months because of the addition of Google Assistant, and just lacking the Google Assistant for so much time of owning this watch has been really a detractor. That being the case, now that I look at the 4 against the 5, I'm really actually quite pleased with what they've done so far. The biggest thing for me is that the Watch 4, the Galaxy Watch 4, was compatible with Android 6 or later. When we jumped to the Watch 5, that's now 8 or later. So they skipped a couple of Android versions, and so that could be another reason why you would be pushed to, basically, level up in essence, right? But not many people are going to be impacted in this particular market, but just know that you now must have an Android 8 or later device, which could hopefully push some people to purchase a newer phone along with the watch. But if you do have an older Android version phone,
Yeah, it's
those Android levels.
it's definitely one that if you're investing in this kind of a device, you're going to want to make sure that the other platforms that connect to it are able to take advantage of it. If they can't, you're just really hamstringing what you can do with the device. But it's a nice design. Again, it kind of follows their bespoke model. There's 3 basic case configurations: blue, silver, and gray. They've got different band offerings that they normally have. They have a 44 millimeter or a 40 millimeter, which is nice. I always like to see them offer the watches in a slightly smaller configuration. So I think it's a good solid iteration on what they had from the Watch 4 to work within this space.
I'm really curious to see.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how the reshaped curvature on the bottom casing is different than the one here now. I couldn't quite tell, and with that new sensor and the new data that they're collecting, the new skin temperature and reader and otherwise, I'm still not sure. I'm gonna have to see some reviews with people who have had it in real life.
The sensor on the bottom is supposed to be larger. The touch point sensor on the bottom is supposed to be larger for better contact. And I will admit that is a fairly consistent point of contention I have with mine when I use the body makeup scan that it does, where you actually hold two fingers on the side, and
Right.
sometimes it just gets confused. It's like, well, don't move. I'm like, I'm not moving. And it's like, don't move. I'm like, I'm not moving. You're just raising my stress level now.
Right.
So it and I have an antagonistic interaction at times. If that sensor is larger, I'm sure that experience will be better and more accurate. The thing that I wish they would do, though, is get away from having a dedicated charger. I'd love for it to be supported by standard wireless charging, and it doesn't. You have to have the little hockey puck. And it's just one more cable to carry around and one more device to carry around. So
Absolutely. Yeah, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and there's no excuse that they can't. And the reason why I say that is because if I take my phone, because I got a Note 20 Ultra, and I can set it to wireless power sharing, lay it face down, I can lay my watch on the back of it and charge off of it. So it's very doable. Just get away from this hockey puck thing. So.
That was exactly my point, because I was on a trip this weekend and to see my family, and I forgot my hockey puck charger, and I was, it's just like that feeling of, oh great, now I put it into watch only mode so that it'll last the time frame, but now it's not tracking steps or anything else like that. And the natural solution would be that I would just take my Pixel phone, drop it on its face, and throw the phone on top of it, and it would charge. I can't do that. It recognizes the phone, but it won't charge. And just, that's ridiculous. Like, give me the ability to charge my own phone. You're not making more money off of these little tiny chargers. That's not a thing. So really, it makes no sense to me. And so I'm looking forward to seeing them make some headway there. I am curious about the battery life on the Watch 5. They're saying 50 hours, and I've gotten very fluctuating results with my own, and that's just based on how much you use it, what you use. Like, if I make a lot of payments using GPay on the watch, that clearly degrades the battery faster. And then, of course, how much connectivity and the strength of the connectivity with the phone definitely also degrades the battery faster, or at least draws it down. And so, those are natural things, but I'm really curious about the battery time here, because while I won't be upgrading to the Watch 5, for folks who are interested, I'm very curious how much better the Watch 5 will be, as well as on the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro, which we'll talk about shortly.
Interesting anecdote to go along with that. You said you put your watch into watch only mode. If you ever want an introduction into how much power all the extra things your watch does soaks up, regular watch mode, I get maybe a day and maybe 10, 12 hours. Battery saver mode, where it cuts a bunch of things back, is like a day and 17 hours. Watch only mode is 21 days. So granted, it's not any smarter than the Timex I had in 1988, but it lasts forever. So
It lasts forever.
You got that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. With it, mine at, like, I don't know what it was. It was like a 20 something percent. It said it was a week that it was going to last.
It'll be like, you're going to pass out from starvation before I die. So
Right. And I figured, if I needed it, I would just turn it, I would activate, and I would still have 20 something percent, 18, 15% on it to be able to utilize. But at least then I would be, not without it at all, which is fine. But yeah. Okay. Anything else? $279 USD is the 40 millimeter Bluetooth version, the LTE model at 40 millimeters is at $329 USD, and then the price goes to $299 and $349 for the 44 millimeter configurations for Bluetooth and LTE, respectively. So
it's pretty straightforward. And what's nice is, honestly, Samsung's doing their thing that they normally do. Their trade-ins are just spectacular. If you're trading stuff in, you can get the 5 out of the box if you have a qualified trade-in for like $150. So, I mean, it's amazing the trade-ins they do on a lot of their devices. So, which is good. So I went through that. I watched that, and I'm like, oh, this is great. This is great. This is great. And nothing about a classic or an upgraded or a pro. Now you have to realize I'm sitting here watching the entire presentation. I'm like, that's it. That's a whole lot of nothing, guys. So then they went into the Galaxy Z Fold 4. I'm like, okay, I guess that was the whole watch thing. So we'll just follow their trend. The Z Fold 4, again, is the refinement. It's a little skinnier. It's a little wider for the bigger front display. They spent quite a bit of time talking about how they've changed the hinge mechanism to make the hinge work better, also reduce the profile of it. They've taken out, and again, engineering geeks love this stuff. I love this stuff. They took out a metal reinforcement plate that went behind the screen and replaced it with basically a carbon fiber equivalent to reduce the overall weight. There is no question up front, they said, this is our productivity device. This is the apparent air defined for the Note line of products. This is what we want it to be. That said, it looks good. It still has some basic hangups that I've seen. It has that lovely little hidden selfie camera under the center display. So you don't see the little punch out, but it's there. The problem that I've seen in some of the reviews post the event is that it's still a pretty bad selfie camera with that fuzziness that you get. It has to do a lot of processing to clean that up on the photos. But that said, what they started to demonstrate, and again, this goes back to what we were doing with the Flip, is they were taking selfie photos by taking the fold and opening it all the way up and turning it around. So at that point, when you were holding it wide open like that, on the left side, you had what was the equivalent of the front screen, and then you had those high-end rear cameras acting as your selfie cameras. I'm like, that's not bad. That's an easy workaround to get around that. They didn't talk very much about the S Pen, though. They said it supports it. It was in the little promo block at the end, but that's all they talked about. They didn't even talk about the fact that they're bringing out an improved case to include it because there's no place in the phone for the S Pen to live. But they had it more than 3 times, I think, in the presentation, where somebody was using it in what I call the little laptop setup, where they'll turn it in landscape mode and then fold it open and have the keyboard at the bottom for touching and then the big display up top. But where they talked about Google earlier with the Flip, they talked about Microsoft with the Fold. So I was impressed by it. I like it. It's definitely a flagship price point, and it's flagship configuration of processor and storage capability. But yeah, it looks like a really viable device to me.
I like the new taskbar that they kind of featured. I think that's a really interesting taskbar configuration and giving you the ability to have, just like on many other devices like Chromebooks and otherwise, you use an application, it then reappears as a recently used item, and so it's there and available for you. So I like some of those pieces. I do like the reality of a productivity tool that's a high-end productivity tool. It's coming out at starting at $17.99 USD and giving you that kind of feel. This is a Android 12L device, and so that's really interesting to see. That'll be great to see what the 12L finally looks like and feels like in a flagship tool. And so we'll see what happens there. I'm not the target audience for this. I'm not interested in foldable screens. I'm not particularly interested in the Flip 4 or the Fold 4. But like I said when we got started, I've had a number of people come to me and say, "Hey, would this really work for me?" My only major detraction here is are two things. One, the price, and it's still pretty heavy. It's a heavy phone because you're taking basically two bodies of the phone and mashing them together. And so, for most people who are shoving this in a pocket, this is going to be a little bit much. I
Yeah.
think I think if you're going to put this in a purse or in a laptop bag and you're always going to have some kind of, uh, satchel with you, not going to be a
Mhm.
problem. But it's that pocketability for this phone that really struggles for me. I feel like they need to get this thing thinner. The concern there, of course, is when it goes into laptop mode, you need something heavy enough to not have it move around. And so
Yeah.
there's kind of that balancing feature where it's like you have to have weight in order for it to do that. And I'm presuming it's battery that's causing that, giving it that weight. But at the same time, you really want it to be pocketable and not for it to feel like you have a box of rocks in your pocket while you're walking around. It's the balancing act there.
When I look at the designs and the positions there or the positioning they're putting this around for productivity, the only thing I can really compare it to as equivalent in the market space is the Microsoft Duo, because it's the dual screen configuration, but theirs is designed different because they have leaned heavily into two screens and working with two screens simultaneously. You saw that in the Fold 4 demonstrations, really the first time this time, because they showed it open and having two apps running side by side in a multitasking mode, or they actually had at 1.3 apps running, which is a good logical use for this. It is a 7.6-inch screen. It's slightly larger than the old Nexus 7 from Google, which was a almost perfect device. So I like that concept. I like that configuration. This is not something you would want to take to the beach, take to any sort of a tough environment, because I just don't know how well it would hold up. Samsung's actually leaned hard into the repairability of it to offer new repair options where you could literally swap out the screens and the digitizers and all yourself, just to because they want people to understand that it's okay to have these. Uh, but that said, there was a glaring omission from the presentation. They didn't say word one about DeX. And this is the kind of device that I think is perfect as a showcase for the capabilities of DeX. And you didn't even get crickets. So I assume, and I haven't been able to verify this, but I assume DeX is on it, but they sure haven't shown it off. So
Yeah.
I would say now it is expensive. Don't get me wrong. It is a really expensive device, even with the trade-ins and everything else.
But
But still,
even with the trade-ins, I this is the device I was excited about it. Okay. And because my main device or the device I carry with me most of the time is an iPad mini. If you flip that thing, okay, you will have around the weight of this device anyways. And I carry, that 8 inches device with me almost everywhere. Okay. And I have, as I've been saying, iPad only and do productivity on the iPad and everything else. I have seen more and more people, because of their craziness on the remote, being more on their phone than any other device. And now, yeah, it's a little bit heavier. I get it, but it's not heavier than your laptop. It's not heavier than the tablet. In you are going to be able to be super productive on one screen or flip it when you need more. When you are, and I don't know how this is going to work, but this will be a very interesting Teams scenario, okay, or Google Meet scenario, or Zoom, okay. When you're in the call and suddenly somebody says, "Oh, let me share," okay. Now you open your device and have a full screen, an 8-inch screen. That will be an impressive. And I'm assuming that being on the same device, that will be a seamless change from one to the other. And so there is so many on the productivity side applications that I see for the mobile gig, okay, for the productivity on the go. And I'm going back to now many decades ago, okay, when the iPad came out. The excitement on the iPad for me was getting rid of those two laptops, putting two class things where I didn't need to have two keyboards. Okay. I think the bag went from 40 pounds to 20 pounds right there. It was fantastic. Could you do everything? No. But for the person who was on the go, 20 pounds, 24/7, that was a blessing. I think this product goes into that person in consistent movement, because you are on the road or because you are in the office, that now have that power of have one device on their hand that they can expand and get an 8-inch screen. I think there is a very, very strong productivity point in there.
There's definitely a case to be made for it. Uh, I'll echo the fear that you raised, Ray. I can only imagine me slipping this thing into my back pocket, forgetting, sitting down and hearing that sickening crack as I crush the hinge. So,
And
$2,000 later. So there is definitely a place for this. There's definitely a market for it, but I think it's a very narrow one. And honestly, I think Samsung is acknowledging that as well when you look at the positioning of this in the overall presentation. It was not the showcase device. Last year,
no,
when
it
the
was
3
not.
came out, it got top billing. And the Flip was kind of like, oh, yeah, we got this cool one too. The cool one got top billing this year. It got the representation. The Fold, not quite as
Well,
much. Now, I'll
maybe
throw
we
out there,
need
and
to go back to the 80s, and then you buy that phone with a nice case that goes into your belt like on the 80s.
well, here's where I think Samsung, and they may have it in the works. If they do, good on you guys. I think they need to take this a step up. I don't think this is a phone play. I think they need to make a Galaxy S9 tablet that folds. Display on the outside, big foldable display on the inside. Now you've got a serious productivity device, because when you take that S8 size and you fold it in half, that's the size of an iPad mini, and you open it up, it's the size of a full iPad. Now you've got a really serious productivity play, something that could easily slip in a carry-on bag without worrying about it because it's folded in half. It's actually more durable because it's folded in half at that physical size. So I'll be curious to see if they go down. I've heard a couple of rumors that that's going to be the case, but we'll see. I'm holding my breath. I think that would be fantastic. But I was just looking at, would I consider upgrading to the Fold 4 from my Note 20? No, I'm going to keep the one I have. I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah, I
So,
will. I will say that your mention of Dex, it does support Samsung Dex. That makes it a more compelling device for a certain audience. So I do see, if you're in that high end market for a phone and you are going from home to office and you just want one device, I work with a lot of executives and they they have lots of devices, but their primary computing device is their phone. Hands down, every single one of them. They consistently, they want assistance with being more productive on their devices, and there's always the point where it's like, well, which device do you normally use? Why are we working on your laptop if you're always on your phone? And then we go into that. So giving them the capability of seamlessly transitioning between the two, where that type of device, you're in a plane and you can set it up, you can do what you need to do, it gets the job done, but then you can go walk into the office and then now you have a full screen keyboard and you're good to go. That's a huge benefit to a lot of executives that I work with, and I think could be really useful. So I appreciate you pointing that out, because I think that is a much more compelling case now for the Z Fold 4 for that audience.
yeah, I could definitely make that argument to having a dedicated Bluetooth keyboard and mouse at each location you're working from. You bring in the device, you open it up, you connect it to an external monitor, and that monitor becomes the primary, and the phone all of a sudden becomes your secondary display. You're up and running. And when you get ready to leave, you just grab the phone, close it, and you're off. That's really compelling. I don't, I would make the argument it was actually more compelling in 2019 when people still left their offices and, aren't working from home as much, but it still fits into that space. I mean, it would be fantastic. If I was a frequent traveler on airplanes and all, oh, absolutely. TSA, eat your heart out. This is going in a little bucket. So I don't have to worry about opening my bag and showing you this laptop. So.
Right, and that's pretty much the case I'm talking about. I'm my clients tend to be traveling all the time. COVID or not, they were still flying. They had to, and so they want that flexibility and the ability to just have a device as opposed to. I mean, like really, some of my clients I've had to work through all the cabling that they would need to carry because they had so many different devices and so many different cable types, international, adapters, and and so on and so forth. It's just like it could drive you crazy, right? So
Yeah.
having the ability to have this one device and just be able to do it all on that one device, that's pretty compelling to me. I know that we didn't talk
Mhm.
about the Watch 5 Pro,
That's
and
next.
so go for it, and let's kick into the Watch 5 Pro.
Because this is my soapbox. Why separate these two out? Why was this? Did somebody forget that you had it, or did I was freaking out at this point because I'm like, really, you forgot this whole thing. And then they show up with the Watch 5 Pro. And I'm like, oh, cool. We're going to get the big one now. And it is the high end version. Their focus with the Watch 5 Pro is all about exercise, it is all about outdoor activity. They called out things like a built in compass, the ability to do what's called track back, where if you run, let's say you're running a mountain path, you can tell it, find me my way back to my car, and reverse that process. It has a beautiful design to it. I think the actual physical casing is very attractive. It's only available in either black or gray titanium, but again, they're titanium cases. They're designed to take some abuse. They have a larger battery in them. They're only available in 45 millimeters. So if you got a skinny wrist, you're going to have this big old hockey puck on your arm. But they have a larger battery to last a lot longer. But there's no bezel. Why, Samsung? Why did we decide that we needed to turn off this bezel? And I don't want this to be my headphone jack moment, but I think it's pretty close because I use the rotating bezel on my watch a lot. Get a message comes in, I just have to spin it, and it does. It spin it one way, it turns off the alarm. Spin it another way, it answers the phone. It does lots of things, and it's very easy to interact with. You used to have a Fossil watch that you would do that through the crown on the side. That was useless. That was just an absolute mess. But the way the Galaxy watches do it now is they do a virtual bezel on the crystal at the top. So you just slide your finger around the outside. Well, it's not always viable to be sliding your finger around the glass. So I I can rationalize the reason to take that piece of design away because yeah, I've had situations where I've gotten like seawater in under that and you feel like this crunchiness for a little bit until you spin all that out, or maybe a grain of sand or something like that. But at the end of the day, it still keeps working and it works really well. Oh, look, I got a low battery notice from my watch. Go figure. Um, but again, the Watch 5 Pro definitely targeted to a pro audience, including that price tag, because what is it? Starts at a minimum 450.
It's
It's some
449
crazy,
USD.
yeah, 449. So it's pricey, no question about it. But I think they're positioning it as a potential competitor to like the Garmins of the world, which if you're heavy into outdoor activities, yeah, this would be a perfect item to throw into your mix.
Yeah, this is for the outdoor enthusiast, but 80 hours of battery life, that's interesting depending
Well,
upon obviously what you're using.
I want to see that real time.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really do because we're asking if you're using your health sensors, you're using the GPS sensors, you're doing activity tracking. Like on mine, if I run it and I run full GPS tracking without the phone hooked up, yeah, you can burn through it in 4, 5, 6 hours, depending on what you're doing. So while it sounds promising, I want to see real world numbers on that. But it is
yeah,
a pretty looking device.
yeah.
Won't
So
argue
449
there.
gives you the Bluetooth version, the 499 gives you the LTE. So yeah, and that 45 millimeter immediately removes me from the the options. I could, that's a honking huge screen to
That's
sit
a
on.
big boy. I
Big
mean, you're
phone.
talking Invictus level device, picking that thing up from Google Earth. So, but that's one of the challenges you'll always have with these things is if you go with the round configuration, you have all these sensors loaded into it, and you want that big battery, then yeah, it's going to take a load on it. I would love to see, just from a design standpoint, I'd love to see somebody design one of these that has the battery extended into the wristband so that you can take advantage of the extra space you have on the sides. I like the idea of having that slightly toned down size, but a faster charge. I mean, now supposedly this will charge, I think it's to 55% in 10 minutes, something like that. Some crazy number. It's just like flash charge,
The
which makes
8-minute
sense.
charge will get you 8 hours.
Okay, perfect. That's the kind of thing when you think about a watch like this, you
No,
have to
correct me.
determine.
I'm sorry. 8-minute charge to get you 8 hours of sleep tracking. You can recharge to 45% in 30 minutes.
Okay, even that's not terrible.
No,
Uh,
no.
but that's the hang up with these is you have, because they're an always wear type of device, you have to decide when you're not going to. And that time period when you're not going to, well, what are you not tracking? Because if you're trying to track all that stuff, you got to know. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I'll just let it charge while I'm sleeping." Well, then you're not getting sleep tracking.
Right.
So what are you willing to give up, and when are you willing to give it up? So
Right, which is why I've actually determined that I need one for my desk and for my bedside table, so that there are moments in the day when I charge it there, and there are moments when I'm like when I take a shower after a gym or run or in the morning, then I'm charging it during those times, and that way I actually have it on at all times otherwise, right? So it's like I'm literally just giving it up at the moments when I'm seated for the day, which is actually a limited part of my day. I'm usually in standing mode for a good portion of my workday. It's when I go into seated mode, I then take it off and put it down. It charges, and that gives me ongoing, you know, basically charge throughout my week. But you have to keep that in mind that when you don't have the watch on, you do not have any of the tracking data, and that certainly I've benefited from seeing the sleep data, and so I really want that always on when I'm sleeping. And when my
yeah,
battery does get into a point where I've like, oh man, I got to charge my phone, my watch, and I have to take it off, I really do feel the loss of not having that data tracked when I'm sleeping. So
And that
yeah,
it
I use
comes to
my.
my complaint. Oops,
Oh
sorry, you use yours.
no, I was going to say I want to hear your complaint. Come on.
My complaint to anyone. I mean, not to the Android, not to the iPhone. Why? I agree with you. Why I can need to take this out? Get me a something that I can put on top of this thing, okay, or somehow to not take it away, to don't stop tracking mine. I agree with you. I same problem with mine. There is a moment that I need to take it out, and not every time I want to take it out.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I have found that I use my watch since it's a Wear OS 3 device and there's more apps supporting it. And that was one of the things that they did call out in both watch demos is the fact that Google is creating a dedicated part of the Play Store around Wear OS 3 applications or Wear OS 3 friendly applications. And I think that's a really big deal because the more capabilities you have on the watch device, the more reasons why you have to use it. One of the things I frequently use, it's kind of bizarre. LastPass is supported by the watch for authentication. So if you use the LastPass authenticator and you have to get a two-factor authentication for a site you signed in, it'll show up on the phone, but it'll also show up on my watch. So I can just say accept. That's incredibly useful. And to me, I use that functionality because it's convenient. That's the type of thing that I like the watch to be able to do for me. So I think we're getting to the point where the watches are starting to go beyond novelty and actually becoming functional parts of what we're doing. But they still have a long way to go, I think. I mean, it's going to be 3 or 4 more generations before we see it get to the point where you say, maybe I don't need a phone. Maybe I just need the watch.
all right,
And
final thoughts. Oh, go ahead, Augusto.
final thoughts, and this works. Final thoughts, and that reflects what you just said, Art, as why there is not a lot to show on the watch. It is now showing how it's maturing, and how
Mhm.
people has changed the use, and now it's time to figure out things as that. Okay, what is the kind of things that you can give me so I never need to remove these things, but it can charge, even if it's ugly. I don't care. Give me the ugly thing on the top of the watch for half an hour so I get the battery. That will work. So all these things are going to start coming.
Yeah, again, this is, I think my final take on this was yet another demonstration of Samsung leaning hard into their ecosystem, recognizing that if you're buying this Samsung gear, if you buy more of it, it works better together. And I have to say, they have not done me wrong in that respect. I have not seen very many instances where there's been difficulties between their own devices. And it's good that they're continuing to do that, that they're owning into that and not trying to be the be all end all for everybody. So my winner out of this entire set of stuff, if I had to say where I was going to put my money, if I was going to spend some money since I didn't get a hat, um, it would be probably the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro. Not a needed upgrade, but it would be a nice upgrade to have. Or I might even look at a Flip 4. So
Yeah, I could be enticed to those Buds 2 Pro. I think that those are really, really interesting, compelling earbuds, and everybody knows my addiction to new headphones. So considering I now have the Google Pixel Buds Pro in my hands at the present moment, which I'm very, very pleased with. So there's definitely room in my desk drawer for another set of headphones. Always, I'll make room. I'll make room. Well, good. Well, thank you, Art, for joining us here today. Where can folks find you and all that you have going on in the world?
this is always fun. I appreciate it. And anybody who wants to follow me, come on over to Gelwick's Tech. Everything that I've got going on is over there, including podcasts and a lot more participation in the Personal Productivity Club. So that's probably the best place if you actually want to talk to me directly. Pop over and join us in there.
Yeah, and so folks can go to anythingbutidle.com/community and go ahead and join us over there. And it looks like Reggie's joining us. Hi, Reggie. How's it going? And
It's interesting what Reggie's talking about. Hi, guys. Long time no see. I feel like all the tracking is more of a hassle than it's worth. I vaguely track steps to get an idea of how much I'm moving, and that's it. And that's totally acceptable when you look at these devices. You have to say, how much value are you going to get from the information that it's gathering? Uh, Step tracking is useful. It's not critical. I actually follow myself, my activity level for the day more than my steps. So I shoot for that hour of activity of every day, because a lot of times I'll be doing something that doesn't move me around a lot, but it generates a lot of activity. But it's what you get out of that data that makes it worth tracking. And there's a lot of stuff you don't have to track. I know my watch does stress, and Lord knows I don't want to know that, so I don't track it.
all right. Thank you, Art. We'll talk to you soon, and take care. All right, everybody. That's it. That's anything but idle for this week. Thank you, Augusto, for putting together the show this and every week.
My pleasure. My pleasure as always.
I'll see you next week. All right, everybody. If there is anything you want us to discuss on next week's episode, I know this week we focus specifically on the Samsung Unpacked event, but if there are any stories you want us to cover, feel free to send them to us through the contact page on Anything But Idle. You can also tweet at us at Anything But Idle on Twitter. And then, of course, as Art actually noted, we have a community dedicated to this podcast. So you can go on over to anythingbutidle.com/community and go ahead and join us inside of Personal Productivity Club. We have plenty of groups. We have plenty of courses, and we have all kinds of other programs going on in Personal Productivity Club. And of course, Anything But Idle, the podcast, is available there as well. And so if you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on any of your podcast apps of choice. And of course, if you want to watch the live streams, you can always go to anythingbutidle.com/live, and you'll see our next live stream scheduled there on the YouTube channel. With that, we will see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life.